This computer, yep. Hello. Hello,
Hi.
this fine Saturday afternoon. Today I'm interviewing Gretchen Morgenson from NBC News. She's I guess you're a senior financial reporter for them
That's
for
right.
NBC and CNBC. So she's written an article on, well, let me see. All right, I'm gonna change the share and then let me share. All right, so I'll share. I'll just do the screen. Yep. Okay, so she has, uh, all right, so she has written about the influence of private equity firms here, and their role in the economy. They have a big influence on healthcare, housing, nursing homes, and other sectors of the economy. And our local hospital system, Conemaugh Health System, is now owned by Duke Lifepoint, which is a private equity firm. And you said in your article they just got bought up by another group.
Um, no, Apollo Global Management is the private equity firm that owns LifePoint.
Mhm.
They bought into LifePoint in 2018. So I'm not sure when Conemaugh was purchased by LifePoint and
I
Duke.
think that was about the same time. Yes.
Okay. So Apollo bought LifePoint and has owned it since then. And it really is one of the biggest private equity owned hospital systems in the country. Also very focused on rural hospitals, where people just don't have choices for care. Now, keep in mind that the interest in private equity, I think, is important, not only because they have spent almost $1 trillion over the last 10 years in healthcare, but they now own, I think, 8% or manage 8% of hospitals across the country.
Oh,
And that's something that you should be concerned about, because the issue of treating the patient fairly and putting their interests first really can conflict with the private equity firm's desire to make money and to have a considerable profit so that they can sell the company down the line. And so it's a question of whether that conflict does have an impact on care. And so there is a lot of academic research, Paul, that shows that private equity investments in healthcare are not good for the consumers of healthcare, not good for patients, not good for workers in those kinds of settings. And so that's really, I think, what's coming into focus for people now is this problem of juxtaposing the need for high profits with the idea of caring for patients.
yes. Okay. I mean, first when I heard that Duke LifePoint was taking over, first I thought, okay, it was LifePoint. Are they affiliated with Duke University at all?
Well, I think Duke, I'm not sure the answer to that question. I don't want to make an error in my response here, but I know that Duke LifePoint does operate in other parts of the country. What that would probably look like would be some sort of a joint venture. But LifePoint being involved does bring you back to the private equity issue.
I know UPMC is the other behemoth healthcare organization here in Pennsylvania, and they are not, I guess, originally it stood for University of Pittsburgh Medical Center, but I mean, they're not affiliated with the University of Pittsburgh anymore.
Right.
So, I mean, that's a whole other issue, almost a whole other show.
Yeah, so
So,
the issue is what do patients do about it? And you know,
Mhm,
as you mentioned to me when we were talking about the Conemaugh system, you have seen a decline in care that occurred
mhm,
after the takeover by the private equity firm. I've
mhm,
talked with many other patients who have said the same thing. We do have in this country an issue with for-profit healthcare, and so it's not only that private equity firms are looking for
yeah,
profits in the space. Certainly, HCA Healthcare is the nation's largest for-profit hospital chain. They have the same, potential conflict of interest between trying to serve their shareholders and trying to, serve
or
patients.
their page. Yeah,
Right.
I
So
mean,
this is an issue that's really coming to the fore, I think, and I think we need to talk about it.
certainly. I mean, well, I mean, I know Stephen Brill, for Time magazine, he wrote a big article several years ago about, the influence of I mean, just the whole for-profit influence, how it actually drives up costs in healthcare rather than controls them.
Right.
So,
Well,
so
and
yes.
costs are only the beginning, Paul. There was a very devastating long-term academic work done by the university, NYU academics at the University of Chicago and UPenn that studied nursing homes that had been purchased by private equity firms. And they found that over a period of 14 years, the mortality rates at nursing homes owned by private equity were 10% higher than those of non-private equity owned nursing homes. And that accounted for 20,000 lives. And so
Mhm.
really, really, that was so stark and so shocking. I think it really got a lot of people's attention, and rightly so. So it's not just that the costs go up. Yes, that's a problem. Obviously, when we are living in an environment where if a person experiences a $400 surprise medical bill, they have the potential to, go bankrupt. I think that this is a real problem for this country, as far as, for-profit healthcare versus for patient healthcare.
I mean, yeah, I mean, even UPMC, it's technically a nonprofit, but still they control millions of dollars. And I knew their CEO, Jeffrey Romoff, he had his own private jet and he had his own personal chef and he made about $6 million a year.
Right. Yeah, well,
So,
nonprofit, is a loose term for some of the hospital systems in this country. I'm not as familiar with UPMC, but they do operate in some cases very much like for profits. But it's something that you've seen and you've experienced personally. I'm sure other people in your
yeah.
area have experienced it. Maybe you've spoken to people. It's really just interesting for me to talk to real patients who've experienced this.
Yeah, I mean, there was like, I don't know. I remember one night I was in the ER and I was in the ER and I looked at um, I was there. I mean, I was I was sitting there overnight. I mean, we all had to sit in our chair. They put us in these specialized reclining chairs.
Well, at least
We
they were
all had this.
reclining.
Yeah, yeah, with about 30 people. And, there was one guy who was just being loud and obnoxious, and they just moved everybody over into these other empty rooms. I mean, my father, he was there till like, we took him there like 9 in the morning. It wasn't like till 2 a.m. the next day until he got a hospital room.
Wow.
So he had pneumonia. And so yes, I mean, certainly, yes, the pandemic did it hit everybody hard, but especially this area. So I do have some other things I can show you.
Okay.
Some other, okay, right. So let me go back to, Okay, sorry, I just, sometimes it's a little hard with this menu thing at the top.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so yes, I was looking at the new county health rankings that came out. You know, like here, these are mortality rates. The circles, those are for Cambria County, where Johnstown's located.
Mhm.
So you can see the elevated mortality rates, say 2016 up to 2020.
Okay,
You know, this is relative, so the square, the line, that's United States, and the triangle, that's for the state of Pennsylvania as a whole.
okay,
So yes, we did have higher mortality rates, and like down here you can see, yes, I mean, but the surrounding counties also had large increases, maybe except for Huntington County,
yeah,
like Bedford, Conemaugh has a hospital there. And so you can see elevated rates in mortality as a result of the pandemic. So let me open up this other thing here. I know, let me go back to Conemaug's website. I'll show you here. They have, of course, they're brandishing their awards, and they do say Duke Lifepoint Healthcare. I'd never heard of Apollo until I read your article. So they do have
yeah.
this thing
That's
here.
the thing is that private equity firms don't put their names on the door, and
Mhm.
so it's difficult for patients to know really who
Yeah.
owns and operates the hospital.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. So like ER wait times, they do have this thing here, like showing like current wait times, I mean, this memorial, that's where I was.
Right.
They're claiming their current wait time, but that's usually until you get to see maybe like a triage nurse. And
Right.
then,
Or they
and then,
sometimes have a doctor just come and sit, greet you, and then that counts as being seen.
yeah, and then you have to wait almost
Right.
a whole day or more just to be seen. So yes, that's okay. And, I guess maybe, obviously using a name like Duke Lifepoint, they may think, trying to associate with a prestigious university like Duke,
Right.
that's a way of, trying to create a veneer of respectability.
Well, one of the things that I pointed out in the article was that LifePoint is among the companies that are under investigation in two Senate inquiries.
Oh,
Uh,
really? Okay.
yeah, and one is they're both bipartisan, but one is by Sheldon Whitehouse, a Democrat of Rhode Island, and Chuck Grassley, a Republican from Iowa, and they're looking at Apollo's ownership and management of LifePoint to see if those financial requirements or financial demands or their financial deals do have an impact on patient care. Now, that's something that's really been going on only a couple of months, so it's early days, but I think that we're starting to see more interest in trying to analyze these transactions and these mergers to make sure that they're not resulting in patients being hurt.
Mhm. Okay. Well, you said so Chuck Grassley's wanting, they're both, and White House, they're both looking into.
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, is there another inquiry? You said there were two?
Yes, there's one from Senator Peters. And this is relatively new. I think I wrote about this a couple of weeks ago. He is looking particularly at the idea that private equity runs a lot of emergency departments of hospitals. And so he's looking at LifePoint, but also other companies who are private equity backed, who run emergency departments. So these would be staffing companies that you would not even know are private equity backed. So they could even be at a nonprofit hospital, for instance, running the emergency department in such a way that, generates a profit for the staffing company. And so Peters is looking at whether these transactions and whether these arrangements hurt patients as well.
I mean, the whole point of being for profit is to extract wealth
Right.
from your, well, yes, your customers to your shareholders. That's the whole point of for profit.
Right.
So, I mean, I just seem like, any time that, there we get close to having some type of healthcare reform or some way to try to take the profit out of it. The owners, they're very good at paying for advertisements to try to, scare people into saying, oh no, government run healthcare.
Yeah, there's this concept that the American healthcare system is the best in the world, which I really don't think is the case anymore. There's a fear of, quote, socialized medicine, but I think we're starting to see that the alternative, which is for-profit medicine, has a lot of problems associated with it as well. And so it isn't quite so obvious that the American healthcare system is the best in the world. One interesting thing I want to point out is about private equity and healthcare is that a private equity firm was the real single mover behind what we came to know as surprise medical bills. And these
Mhm.
are when you go to the emergency department, you have a broken bone, you're in an extreme circumstance, like you say, your father had pneumonia, you're looking for care. And what happened was this private equity firm was able to, they ran the emergency department and they were able to carve out from the regular hospital's insurance coverage. They were able to carve out the emergency department and make it not in network. So not in the insurance network.
Okay.
What this meant was that then you, the patient, would be billed some astronomical amount because you were out of network. Now, there's no way that a person who's, uh, bleeding profusely from the head or has a broken leg or pneumonia is
Yeah.
going to check whether they're in network or out of network when they go to their local emergency department. And it was quite a shocking finding by the Yale University when they did this analysis and found that that was what had been happening. And so you had these surprise medical bills that were bankrupting people. And they thought that they were just going to their local hospital where their coverage had always been, absolutely understood and expected. And so this became such a cause celeb and such an outrage that our ineffectual Congress actually did something about it, bipartisan effort to stop surprise medical bills. But just so your viewers and surprise medical bills was a creation of this private equity firm.
Okay, well, I did get one for, they try to remove some skin tags from me, and I did get a surprise bill for $800 for that procedure. I didn't even know it wasn't covered or it would be that expensive.
Right. So
So,
that's the kind of thing we're talking about here.
mhm. So, okay, and so and I guess you did talk about how even private equity firms, when they buy up, you said that they even buy up, sometimes they buy up
Yes,
housing
they buy
units to
apartment
rent.
buildings, they buy single family homes. There are particular hot spots for this kind of
Mhm.
purchase. One is Atlanta, Georgia, because they have very few tenant protection laws in Atlanta.
Mm,
Another area is Arizona, lots of home investment by private equity in single family homes, multifamily apartment buildings. And they often just jack up the rents. They don't maintain the properties as well. Again, it's your extraction idea. You're extracting profits from the operation of the home or the apartment. And it puts people in a vise, really, because when the rates go up and when the rents go up, if their incomes aren't going up the same amount, they're going to be behind the eight ball.
okay. I mean, I do know, I guess maybe private equity, maybe there hasn't been a lot of it here in Pennsylvania. Probably maybe there may be better tenant protection laws, but also because, I mean, housing's so cheap and the likelihood of them making a profit by investing in housing around here in this part of Pennsylvania is very low.
Well, it might be different in some of the more urban settings.
Yeah, so that's why obviously I mean, real estate's more expensive there, and I guess they might be able to turn a profit.
Yeah.
So, okay, I do know, I think we talked about this before when we spoke on the phone. I mean, I know Johnstown right here, we were under Act 47 protection from the state from about the mid 90s up until about maybe like a year ago. I mean, I guess because Conemaugh was a nonprofit, they weren't paying any taxes.
Yeah.
Now that they're for profit, yes, they are paying the city taxes, and so yes, that was able to lift Johnstown out of Act 47. But that doesn't necessarily mean the area is doing any better or the people who live here are doing any better.
Well,
So,
you would know that better than I. Certainly when you talk with people in your area, you're going to hear from them about how they're doing financially.
mhm,
It is good, of course, to have a taxpayer, but what is the cost? Is the
mhm,
cost, patient care
yeah.
decline?
Mhm.
So you have to think about the whole 360 degrees of the thing.
Yes, and I've been looking at, well, I mean, mortality rates are still high here, and and I'll be digging more into the county health ranking numbers to see how the area is faring. I mean, obviously we had some of the poorest school districts here in the area, like well, I guess 16 of the top 20 poorest school districts in the area in the state are basically in west central PA. I mean, Greater Johnstown School District is the second poorest, and I mean, I'd hate to see a private equity firm try to inject itself into that.
Wow.
So,
Well, I hope not, but it's really important work what you do to try to identify these trends and to identify what might be behind the trends.
okay, all right. So, okay, so all right, so like, what will you still be writing more articles on these types of firms and
I will
their
be. I actually just last year, right around this time last year, I published a book. Simon and Schuster actually published it called "These Are the Plunderers," which is about private equity and how it has really taken over so much of our economy
Okay.
that you don't really know how much of private equity you interact with on a day-to-day basis because they don't put their names on the door.
Yeah.
Um,
I
so
guess they use a lot of shell companies to hide what they're
well,
doing.
no, they buy a company, existing company. So, for instance, Dunkin' Donuts, okay, that's owned
Mhm.
by private equity. So the
Oh, it
private
is.
equity firm buys Dunkin' Donuts. It doesn't change the name, obviously, because it has that
Mhm.
long-standing customer relationship and
Mhm.
brand, et cetera. So you don't know that when you go to Dunkin' Donuts, it's a private equity firm that you're patronizing. So the book with a co-author of mine, Josh Rosner, we really examine sort of how these firms have created a lot of billionaires themselves, while really extracting wealth from the middle class, from workers, from pensioners, from taxpayers even, because many of these companies end up going bankrupt because they have very high debt costs, because the debt is what's used to buy the companies. And so when a company goes bankrupt in your town, there go the tax revenues, and it really can have an enormous impact. Toys R Us, for instance,
Yeah.
when it went bankrupt, the town in New Jersey where it had been headquartered lost a significant portion of its revenues, tax revenues. So these are, kind of impacts that are a little bit hidden from view, but are definitely happening.
Okay, well, that's disturbing and okay, well, I appreciate the work you're doing and I will be happy to link
And
to your
you.
book and yes, I will be happy to be in touch. Um, and well, okay, and I thank you for
Well,
your
I
time.
thank you for the work you're doing, and also for speaking with me and for sharing your experience. And just know that I am very interested in this issue. And I think this Wall Street Journal might have had a story on Thursday about how I think a handful of states, maybe 5 states, have started to talk about requiring private equity acquisitions of healthcare to be approved at the state level before they are allowed. And so I think we're starting to see more scrutiny of these deals, and for good reason. So I think that's a good thing as well.
Okay, it did say at the bottom that yes, you had won a Pulitzer Prize.
Yes, that's true. Long time ago.
Okay. Back, but I guess you were researching Wall Street
Wall
back
Street.
then.
Yes, I'm
This
a
was
financial reporter, and so I did cover Wall Street for a long time. And as you know, Paul, money intersects everything. So if you're a financial reporter, you can write about anything, there's always going to be a money element involved, whether it's healthcare,
Mhm.
whether it's fast food, whether it's
Yeah,
mining, it's always
it
comes down
is.
to money.
I guess, and yours was right after 9/11 and
Right, right.
okay, maybe like okay. All right, well, thank you, and I appreciate your time and okay, I think I'm ready to stop recording. So let me
Thank you.
okay. Okay.